Hello, welcome to another episode of Bville Live. I'm Christina Neely and I'm your host. Today I'm going to be making some leek potato vegetable soup. Now I make my potato soup a little bit differently than most people. I'm not going to be using any milk. I don't use dairy and I make it slightly differently, but I think you're going to like the twist. Shall we get started? Alright, first I have a beautiful plate of farm fresh organic vegetables that I got from Brady Farm. It's a local organic farm up in in Syracuse, New York, and it's an urban farm, and they deliver delicious organic produce. So for this soup, you're going to need potatoes, which I have over here. You're going to need leeks, and I'm going to show you how to prepare those. Carrots, I'm putting onions, garlic in, and I'm also putting some parsnips in. Parsnips are from the radish family. They have a slight bite to them, but they're delicious. You can eat them raw. These are nice and sweet because they're young and they're fresh and they're organic. So let's get started, okay? So the first thing we're going to do is you need a little bit of oil in your pan. You have several choices. You can either use butter, that's done for traditional leek soup, which is just potatoes and leeks with a little bit of butter in the saucepan. But I happen to have a little bit of the bacon ends that I had in my fridge, so I'm going to use those up. So I'm just going to slice these up really fine, and I'm going to put them in my saucepan, and that'll be what I need to cook my vegetables in and get started. And I think it's going to add a nice flavor with the potatoes. It'll have a nice little bacony flavor. And if you are vegetarian and you don't want to use the bacon, just leave it out. Use olive oil. You can use butter, or you can just put a little bit of water in the pot too. Any of those are fine. So I'm going to turn my stove on to high. I have a Dutch oven that I'm going to use today. I'm going to scrape that bacon in and let that get sizzling. Alright, so I've already washed my vegetables, but I did leave one leek out because a lot of people don't know how to prepare leeks. Don't be afraid to experiment and try new vegetables. They're really healthy. The more vegetables that you eat, the better off you are. So when you get a leek like this, you're going to wash it. Now, a lot of leeks that I used to get from the grocery store were very sandy. So you're going to chop off the end, get rid of the root end. Now, you usually only use about this part to where it greens. The rest of the stalk is pretty fibrous and it's kind of hard to chew on. The other thing that you need to do is cut the leek in half and open it up. Now you can see that these are very clean because these are raised on an organic farm. There's no sand in them at all, so I don't even need to rinse them out. But if you get them from the grocery store, I would open them up and rinse them out. Otherwise you're going to have sandy soup, and that's not going to taste very good. Because these are from the farm, I'm actually going to go up a little bit further in the stalk than I usually do, just because I think that it's going to be tender enough. These are pretty young leeks. Sometimes you get leeks that are, you know, good 1 to 2 inches across, and they get really tough at the top. So I cut that into fourths, and then I'm just going to cut down, and I'm going to throw that in with my bacon and my onions and let that cook up. Get my wooden spoon. Give that a stir. Now turn the heat down a little bit, down to medium, so that I don't burn my bacon. And I just want to cook that bacon. Now I'm going to be adding chicken stock to it as well. If you want to make it vegetarian, you can just add water. You don't even, or vegetable stock is fine. I'm going to use the plate to keep the counter clean. I love this soup. It snowed up here yesterday, and I wanted to make something that was warm for the stomach and for the soul. So I also have these beautiful baby onions. You can use shallots, you can use onions, but I like these. They have a wonderful flavor to them. We're going to chop those up, and it doesn't really matter what you add first and second. I kind of chop the leeks and the onions up all about the same time and throw them in the pot. They just need to cook a little bit longer, not too long. And if it's taking you time to chop it, you just turn the heat down a little bit. But this is kind of like a root soup, and very nice this time of year because you can get all these vegetables in the supermarket or at your local farmer's market. So I just chop my onion up like that, throw that in the pan, do the rest of my leeks. Now, if you do find that you cut off too much of the stalk of the leek and it tends to be a little bit tough, you know, it's no big deal. You still get the flavor for it. You just don't want to go too far up the stalk because they can get pretty fibrous and they won't taste very good. But, you know, you can cook them down. Now, some people, when they just make the traditional leek soup with just the leek, onions, and potatoes, what I used to do was take a hand blender and blend the potatoes in and then add milk, but I don't drink milk anymore, so I'm not going to make a cream base to this soup. I'm just going to make it a chicken stock base. You could add milk to this as well, and that would be fine. I'm just not going to do that today. I thought about adding almond milk, and you know, you could do that, have vegetable soup with a chicken base one day and then have the almond milk the next. Okay, so I'm going to keep cutting up my veggies. I just cut these little baby onions in fourths if they're going to cook up pretty quickly. And then for the garlic, I'm just going to crush it with my heel in my hand and then chop it. And the reason that you crush it first is because it brings out the essence of the garlic and the oil. Put that aside. I'm going to put the garlic in last. You never want to burn your garlic because if you burn your garlic, it'll make the whole dish taste terrible. And I'm also going to chop up my celery now and get that in because that takes a little bit longer to cook. So you can hear my dog in the background. I think they're out front plowing. She's a really good watchdog. She's Jack Russell and Beagle. She's a rescue dog. And anybody walks near the property, she lets them know. So I'm just going to keep stirring in there. It smells wonderful. And then I'm going to take my little parsnips, cut them in quarters, and then slice them down. And this will give a nice little bite to the soup. Not too much. You know, like I said, it's from the radish family. It has vaguely has a radish taste to it. Throw that in. Vegetable soup, I leave it kind of on the chunky side so it gives some sustenance. And then for my carrots, and I don't peel since these are organic. I just scrub the outside. I don't even bother peeling them because I know that they haven't been treated with chemicals. I have carrot, I have potatoes here, and I do the same thing with those as well. It's you know, there's more vitamins and fiber in these skins. And I just chop those up like that. We're going to go right in. And I'll let you see what that looks like. So you can see and hear the soup. It looks absolutely beautiful. Okay, so I have my vegetables chopped up in there. I have a few more parsnips I'm going to add, and then I'm going to start adding my potatoes. And since the potatoes don't need to brown, you can throw them in after you put your broth in or before, it doesn't matter. But you're going to add chicken stock to that. Now, I just use bouillon cubes. I find it's easier to use. I put a bunch of water in, and I'll show you that next. And then I add, I don't add a lot of bouillon. I only add about 1 or 2 cubes, or in this case, it's going to be 1 or 2 teaspoons. And that's plenty of flavoring because I'm going to add a lot of spice. I like the vegetables to come through in a vegetable soup. After all, that's what it's about. And if you put too much salt or bouillon in there, it kind of masks the flavor of the vegetables, and that doesn't do much good. Okay, so for the potatoes, when you cut them up, I like to cut them in half, and then I put them down on the board face down, and I just cut them into chunks. You want to try and cut them as symmetrical as possible. If it's too big of a potato, you can just cut it down further. So I've added all the vegetables to the pot. I filled the water to about 1 inch from the top. There's probably about 4 to 5 cups of water in there. And now I'm going to add my seasoning, and then I'll bring it to a... Okay, for the seasoning, we are going to add some paprika, some ground cumin, and some turmeric. But before we do that, we're going to add our bouillon cubes. I'm only using 2 bouillon cubes. I don't add a lot, and I add salt and pepper to this as well. You can use chicken stock. You can boil the bones down if you want to. I'm in a hurry tonight, so I'm just going to take a shortcut and use bouillon cubes. Just pop those right in, and they'll dissolve pretty readily as soon as this comes to a boil. So you're going to bring this to a boil after you add your spices, and then as soon as it comes to a boil, you can put the lid on and let it simmer. You simmer it until the potatoes and the vegetables are soft, and then it's pretty much ready to serve. I'm going to serve it up with some nice garlic bread tonight. Okay, I'm going to give that a stir. All right. So then I'm going to add about half a teaspoon of paprika, about a half a teaspoon of ground cumin, and about a half a teaspoon of turmeric. And I like these vegetables. It gives the soup a really nice, rich color, and it's very good for you. And then last, I'm going to add some salt and pepper. About a 1/4 to a half a teaspoon of pepper, and about a half a teaspoon of salt. You can add more if you taste it later and you find out that it's not salty enough. And then last, I'm just going to add a little bit of pepper flake, like a pinch, not much. Remember, you have the parsnips in there. They're going to give it a little bit of a bite too. So, alrighty, we're going to let that come to a boil, put our lid on to simmer, and I'll show you what it looks like when we're done. Once that comes to a rolling boil, you're going to turn your heat down to low and put the lid on. And let that simmer until the vegetables are tender.